Prior to this year, the office of the Vice President has been vacant 16 times for a total of 37 years since 1789. Indeed, the office itself has historically been denigrated by many of its occupants who at best viewed it as a burdensome chore and at worst as a stepping stone to political oblivion. We've learned that the office is of critical importance to the fabric of our government. We meet today to consider whether the man nominated by the President is fully qualified for the position he hopes to assume. But if history is to instruct us, this committee should view its obligations as no less important than the potential selection of a President of the United States. I believe the time is over when the presidential nominee of either of the two major parties can select his running mate as an 11th hour afterthought on the eve of his own nomination. And I'm pleased to see that this most serious question is now the subject of study by academic and political groups. The suggestion has been put forward that the nomination of Mr. Ford be made hostage to the domestic political warfare currently underway and assaulting the ears and the minds of our fellow citizens throughout the country. I believe I speak for the committee when I say that we see no merit, but only danger in such an approach. The nation sorely needs a demonstration of unity and of healing. It needs a lessening of political squabbling and partisanship and a chance to catch its breath. At the same time, however, we should not close our eyes to the fact that the tragedy befalling certain presidential appointments in recent months points up the responsibility of this committee to conduct a fair but most searching inquiry into the present nominee. So we are meeting to consider the merits of Mr. Ford alone, as an individual who, while he has represented his party in legislative battle, has a record as an individual, a private and a public man whose career over the last quarter century must be placed in the spotlight of public scrutiny and judged with fairness and with objectivity. Mr. Ford is a political animal, and I am sure he would be the first to admit it. There are some who would say that this committee should challenge the nominee because of a virtually unbroken record of favoring big business during his 25 years in the House. I do not believe that such a challenge is valid. There are others who might decry Mr. Ford's voting record as indicating an indifference to the needs of the disadvantaged. But here again, I say that this is not relevant to his overall qualifications. If this committee were to engage in an ideological tug of war over Mr. Ford's voting record, we would be denying the right of the President to choose whom he wishes, for certainly the President has exercised his option to choose a man whose philosophy and politics are virtually identical to his own. This committee is exercising an original and historic power conferred separately upon the Senate and the House of Representatives by the Constitution. This power has never before been exercised in this manner. There are no precedents. There is no history. But let me make it plain. These hearings are in no way an inquisition, but the discharge of our constitutional obligations under the new 25th Amendment. It is for the members of this committee to determine to the best of their abilities whether a nominee for the second highest office in the land possesses the qualifications requisite for that office. We have a responsibility of examining this man's qualifications very thoroughly, including his morals, his integrity, his financial history, and possible conflicts of interest. Some may find fault and others high praise for the political philosophy of Gerald Ford. But I believe the mandate of the committee is clear. We cannot withhold confirmation based on the voting record of this man in the field of social welfare or minimum wage or foreign policy or other burning questions of the day. Although we will want to consider all of the man's record spanning a quarter of a century of voting on legislation vitally affecting this country. But we must perform our task with utmost concentration upon his views of the presidency itself, on the issue of executive privilege, on the matters of impoundment of funds, on the question of campaign financing, and on what Congressman Ford would do if he were president and faced decisions bearing on the authority and jurisdiction of the courts and related matters in which the executive branch confronts an independent legislative and judiciary. I hope that the nominee will address himself to these areas. Congressman Ford was nominated for the office of Vice President by President Nixon on Friday, October 12, 1973. The Senate referred the matter to the Committee on Rules and Administration on Saturday, October the 13th, 73. On that same day, the committee met to activate appropriate courses of action designed to expedite investigations, hearings, and reports on the qualifications of the nominee. Decisions were made that the hearings would be open to the public and to the news media. Bona fide witnesses capable of shedding light on the qualifications of the nominee will be heard. All members of this committee have access to or have been briefed on information in our files or will be on information received. To some degree, the committee's inquiries have been limited and slowed due to the conditions imposed by the Department of Justice, which restricted access to FBI files on the nominee to scrutiny by the chairman and the ranking minority member. I regret that limitation because all of the members of the committee must act as judges in this matter, and all members should have access to complete files. The committee has accepted that condition, however, and has received summaries of data from the chairman and the ranking minority member, Senator Cook, after our complete review. In addition to FBI records and income tax records, the committee has checked into confidential statements filed with the House Committee on Standards of Official Conduct and other financial records filed with or maintained by the Clerk of the House and the House Disbursing Office. The 25th Amendment of the Constitution became law on February 10, 67, when it was ratified on that date by the state of Nevada, whom I'm proud to represent in the Senate. In my judgment, it is uniquely coincidental that the 25th Amendment will be activated for the first time in the United States Senate under the jurisdiction of the Committee on Rules and Administration, whose chairman is from that same state of Nevada. To that end, we have investigated, are investigating, and will investigate every pertinent and relevant issue we can find which will bear on the qualifications of the nominee for the high office for which he has been designated. We intend to schedule further public hearings to hear the views and receive the testimony of members of Congress, organizations, and private individuals. In this manner, we can begin to rebuild and restore a badly shattered public confidence in the government of the United States. The committee has sought to obtain relevant information about Congressman Ford, the Vice President designate, from virtually every official and public source known to us. The committee considers its responsibility in studying this nomination to be of the utmost gravity. This is the first time in the history of our country that any nominee for either of its top two posts has been subjected to such a detailed investigation. Usually, the press functions as the investigator of the candidate for president and for vice president during the nominating and election process. At the committee's request, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, since October 13th, has reported to me that 33 field offices and over 350 special agents have interviewed over 1,000 people in all parts of the country, resulting in over 1,700 pages of reports, including raw investigative data. This detailed report has been made available to Senator Cook and to me, and I have separately studied every page of it. Altogether, the FBI advises me that this has been the single biggest investigation it has ever conducted on a candidate for public office. The efforts of the staff of the Rules Committee and of my own staff and those of the FBI have been and are being supplemented by other investigators borrowed from the staff of the Senate's Permanent Investigation Subcommittee, the Internal Revenue Service, the General Accounting Office, the Library of Congress, and other sources. It is for the members of this committee to establish a precedent, a solid constitutional precedent, by pursuing an orderly, logical, thorough, and honest inquiry into the nominee's qualifications. This is being done in the public interest because the citizens of the United States who normally choose the president and the vice president are participating vicariously in this confirmation proceeding by following each action taken by the respective branches of the Congress. Therefore, in the interest of all citizens of this nation, and in the finest traditions of a free country, it behooves us to conduct these hearings as painstakingly, as fairly, and as honestly as is humanely possible, so that the results will be accepted as just and honorable.